Jackson was not built like this. He was a little closer in build to my granddaughter, Sophie. So he's about 5'7", about 155, 160 pounds. So not like this. And yet this is how we remember him. Not just because of this statue, but because he assumes this larger-than-life persona in the war. We know the story. He's marching, ordered to go to one place on the battlefield, hears the sound of the guns, and so he marches to the sound of the guns instead, positioning himself on the back slope of a hill, Henry House Hill, waiting for the Federals who have paused in their attack. They get themselves reorganized, push forward. He springs up from behind the hill and lets them have it. And in the midst of that fight, some of the other Confederates are being driven from the field. Bernard B., a native of Charleston, South Carolina, commanding a mixed brigade of Alabamians, North Carolinians, and Mississippians, runs up to Jackson and says, "They're driving us, sir, they're driving us." And Jackson says, "We will give them the bayonet, sir." And so B goes back, tries to find the remains of his shattered brigade. He's only been in command since the 17th, so he's been in command all of 4 days. Nobody knows this guy. None of his men know this guy. And as he's trying to find his guys that he doesn't know, he's like trying to rally them. And he says, "Look, there stands Jackson like a stone wall. Let us resolve to die here, and we shall conquer." Or he says, "Let us rally around the Virginians." Or he says, "Yonder stands Jackson, let us go to him." Or something. The historical record becomes super muddy because in the midst of battle, there are maybe 50 people that hear B holler out, "There! Go there!" Only 4 of them ever write about it. And only 2 of them write about it contemporaneously. And neither of them mention Jackson standing like a stone wall. It finally appears, though, in a newspaper in the Charleston Mercury a few days after the battle because a staff officer of B's was ordered after the battle to send a report to the hometown paper to tell how awesome B was during the battle. He was so brave, and he shot down leading his men in to Jackson's assistance. And let B's name forever resound in the annals of history as a great hero. And I think that's so ironic because the only way B's ever remembered is the footnotes to the guy who does get remembered, Stonewall Jackson. Nobody remembers B's name except for that. So, who says what? On the monument it says, "Rally around the Virginians." You know why? Because the Virginians who are in the Stonewall Brigade want to make themselves sound awesome. And so that story takes on this prominence, led by Jubal Early, who's one of the great proponents of Confederate memory after the war. This monument was put up on the Manassas battlefield in Virginia, so it's going to tell that Virginia writ large story. I love a great comment from John Adams. He said, "In Virginia, all the geese are swans." And here's a great example of that. So we don't really know what B said exactly, but we know that his men do go into battle. They do take up a position around Jackson's men. They're able to repulse those Federal attacks. And of course, the Confederates win the day. Jackson wins the nickname Stonewall Jackson. Some people say, like, "Oh, well, it was an insult. Oh, they're saying Jackson's not moving. He's like Stonewall at Kernstown, not doing a thing," right? I don't buy that argument, even though some people like to say it was an insult, because the Stonewall Brigade adopts that as its nickname. And I don't think they would if it was an insult. But they become extremely proud of their identity as the 1st Brigade and the 1st Division. So Jackson scores an important battlefield victory. In the scope of battlefield victories in the war, Manassas is kind of a small fight. But it's a huge PR win for the Confederates. It's a huge military win for them in the moment. And it becomes this huge, huge myth-building moment. Now, I was just talking the other day to another group about Jackson and becoming Stonewall. But after this, don't forget, comes the Romney campaign and the loss of Kernstown. So the myth building isn't an inevitable thing. It's like, "Oh, Stonewall Jackson wins the war, hooray!" has a chance to do terrible, to perform poorly on the battlefield. The myth of Stonewall is established here, but he doesn't become Stonewall until later. Well, when is that later? Not quite yet. Second Manassas. Here we can see Jackson is in an unfinished railroad cut. He's going to literally resort to have to throw rocks at the Federals as they keep attacking, keep attacking, keep attacking. And A.P. Hill's like, oh, everybody got ammunition! And Jackson's like, do your duty, stay there. And because we know that Richard Garnett ran out of ammunition and moved and got arrested, A.P. Hill's going to stay there. They're going to start throwing rocks. But this is a place where Jackson does this incredible flank march to get in the rear of John Pope's army, trashes Pope's supplies at Manassas, takes up a strong defensive position, dukes it out with the famed Iron Brigade in the first day of the battle, holds his position for the second day of the battle, sets up Longstreet's big coup de grace on the third day of the battle. Jackson, Longstreet, and Stuart as a team are working in peak performance as a team for Robert E. Lee. It's really hard to find something negative to say about the Confederate high command at this battle because they just perform on all cylinders. It's a 5-star team effort for Robert E. Lee. Okay? Jackson playing this really key part of that. But I think even eclipsing that is his achievement in the Valley Campaign in the spring of 1862. Here we see that this is his grave in Lexington. Beginning in May, he's going to fight 5 battles over the course of a month and a half, marching nearly 1,000 miles, appearing, disappearing, appearing again over such vast distances in such short periods of time that his men become known as Jackson's foot cavalry. And he's able to defeat 3 armies that outnumber him by more than 3 to 1. Now we know in retrospect, John Fremont, Robert Milroy, Daniel Banks, it's not the A-Team, right? They don't know it at the time. John Fremont is nationally famous for opening the West as the Pathfinder. Robert Milroy's nickname is the War Eagle. It kind of becomes a one-hit wonder, sort of like Kung Fu fighting by Carl Douglas, right? But Jackson could have been a one-hit wonder too, except this campaign opens things up. And it's important to remember what else is going on for the Confederacy in the spring of 1862. Okay, Shiloh was a horrible, horrible wake-up call for everybody, and a loss. And that's on the heels of losing an entire army at Fort Donelson after losing Fort Henry. We've had the fall of New Orleans. So we've got all these things going on elsewhere. We've got Ambrose Burnside is winning on the North Carolina coast. Ambrose Burnside, really? Okay. So we have all these things that are just absolutely gutting Confederate morale across the map. So when Jackson marches out to a little town in McDowell in West Virginia that nobody's heard of and wins, they're like, woo, finally somebody moves somewhere. Okay? And then he wins, and he wins, and he wins. And it's not necessarily the scope of these things that's important. It's the context, because the editors in Richmond who are covering this really blow this up. Like, look, we've got this great war hero who's doing amazing things out in the Shenandoah Valley. And the Confederacy, dying for some silver lining, gloms onto it. And if you look at newspaper accounts throughout the South, in late May, early June, mid-June, late June, as these reports come, you would think that the second coming has arrived. Okay? Because Jackson gets turned into this. But it's really not until Jackson escapes a federal trap at Strasburg. We'll talk about that more in a second. He sends part of his men all the way up to Harper's Ferry, and then he marches them back almost 40 miles in a day in the rain, gets through, and that's when his men are like, oh, old Jack knows what he's about after all. But it isn't until the end, or the beginning of June, that his men begin to think of him as Stonewall. At that point, they're cussing him out for making him march so much, so quickly. fighting, march, fight, march, oh my gosh, more of this. But once these wins start adding up, once he escapes that trap, they realize they're part of something special. And of course, because it is his grave, whenever my daughter and I go to visit, we bring a lemon as our little offering, a little peace offering for Jackson. Jackson loved lemons. So, what tops the Valley campaign? Oh, see, Jackson loves lemons. Okay, so I said, AI, show me Stonewall Jackson with lemons. He's drinking a lemon beer, I guess. He doesn't like beer. He's drinking lemon beer. Doesn't look very happy about it, but hey, there it is. So, Harper's Fair. So here's what I'm going to say. Here's his greatest hit. September 12th to the 15th, 1862. Jackson he knows Harper's Ferry well. You guys probably know it best because of John Brown's raid. But here, let me show you. Harper's Ferry sits at the confluence of the Potomac, Shenandoah rivers. It's a really low spot with heights here in Maryland, heights here in Virginia, the Loudon Heights, and then we have Bolivar Heights and a parallel ridge over here called Schoolhouse Ridge. So it's an inherently indefensible spot because you just bombard from all these different sides. But there's a federal arsenal there. It's a key spot for the Union War effort. So when the war breaks out, Confederates capture it. Jackson is sent up there to be in charge. So he's going to spend a lot of time kind of figuring out what is this position. As I mentioned, you guys probably know from John Brown's raid. Also, James Brown was there, working in the Civil War. Jackson's first exposure to Harper's Ferry relates to John Brown. He's actually in charge of security at John Brown's hanging at Charlestown. You can tell in this sketch that that's Stonewall Jackson because he's got a lemon in his haversack. He's there on December 2nd, overseeing the Corps of Cadets. He's overseeing security with the Corps of Cadets. He's got artillery pieces from VMI that are there in case anybody gets out of hand, but of course it doesn't. That's about as close as he gets for a while. Then he gets put in command there at the beginning of the war, and he'll oversee it. He spends day after day after day walking the ground.